We're joined this morning by Reverend Mark Thomas. Over the years, Mark's avocational desire for spiritual development has brought him to study Vedic, Buddhist, Taoist, and mystical Christian teachings with a variety of teachers and writers from around the world. He currently serves as pastor of the Fellowships of the Spirit Church in Cassadaga, New York. Mark teaches classes in advanced meditation practices at the Fellowship School of Spiritual Healing and Prophecy and to its graduates. Mark is joining us this morning via the magic of Zoom. Welcome back, Mark.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm going to let that video come on, or my face be with you here. It'll come.
We're hoping for your faith.
Yeah. The setting is, I can't turn the video back on. It says you all folks in there have to turn that video back on for me. There we go. Now I'm with you that way too. No, I'm not at St. Augustine, as the image is behind me. And I am also up here I'm today in Syracuse, New York, and it's cold up here too. And so we're all braving the weather this winter. It seems to be a long, cold one up here. I don't know how long it's been for you folks in Florida, but it's been a challenge up here. But it's really great to be in a warm space with you this morning and talk about one of the subjects that I've been studying for a long time, and that is the life and the legacy of the Reverend Dr. Howard Thurman. So I'd like to speak a little bit about him this morning. I'm going to share some passages from his work, and then I'll be available at the end of your service today for some Q&A if you'd like to take advantage of that for a few moments. So again, it's wonderful to be back with you. I want to thank the Unitarian Universalist community here in Smyrna, New Smyrna, for the invitation to be back with you again. So what I can do with you this morning is introduce Howard Thurman to you. I cannot get into enough of the depth of a man who lived 81 years and who accomplished so much. So I'll introduce him to you through his words, through my relaying to you some of my experiences of Dr. Thurman's work. I came upon him and his work in 1996. He died in 1981. I was, as part of my work at Fellowships of the Spirit, one of our graduates, a woman from Cleveland, had put a book in my hands, a book that's for the inward journey that she recommended I read, and introduced me to Howard Thurman's work. At that point, I was completely unaware of Dr. Thurman. I was a child of the 60s. Certainly, my mother was very much involved in our community in Rockford, Illinois, in the civil rights movement activities. And I was very much inspired by that as a child. I read a lot of books, Martin Luther King's works, as well as Malcolm X and many others. And so I was keenly aware of a lot about the civil rights movement, but what I didn't know is who was this gentleman that was underneath all of that as a mentor and a spiritual guide for so many of the people that were leaders in the civil rights movement in the 1950s and 60s and 70s. So I started down this walk digging into the life and the work of Howard Thurman, and became much more inspired the more I delved into it. Howard Thurman was what I would call a practical mystic, and that is not an oxymoron, especially when you look at the depth at which he went in both his practical wisdom and his practical life, but also the depth of his mystical spirituality and how that came about. I'm going to talk a little bit today about how both of those took shape in the man as he advanced his ministry in the world. So let me talk for a little bit with you this morning about who is Howard Thurman. He was born in Daytona Beach in 1899. He was raised predominantly by his grandmother and mother. His mother was a widow and when Howard was only 8 years old. Howard's father died after a very short illness, and that left him bereft. He was raised from then on by his grandmother and mom. His grandmother had been a slave in the pre-Civil War era, and she was a deeply religious woman, Baptist, and he was raised in a Baptist tradition. When his father died, something very unsettling happened. His father didn't want any part of Christianity, didn't want any part of religion. His father liked the outdoors. He was very connected to nature. And what happened at the point of the preparation for the funeral for his father in 1907, and Howard being an 8-year-old boy, the preacher would not let a service be held at the Baptist church because Howard's father was not a practicing Christian. Well, the deacons of the church overruled and the service did happen, but he was very deeply affected by this and didn't want any part of Christianity at a very young age. That did change. His grandmother and his mother, through their raising of him, helped him heal the wounds of the way the family was treated. But one of the most important aspects to the healing of those wounds was Howard's connection to nature. And there is a tree, and that tree still sits in the yard of the home where Howard was raised. The home is still available to be toured in Daytona. And there's a passage from his autobiography that I would like to share with you this morning. And these are his words. There was a large oak tree in our backyard. I needed the strength of that tree, and like it, I wanted to hold my ground. Eventually, I discovered that the oak tree and I had a unique relationship. I could sit my back against the trunk and feel the same peace that would come to me in my bed at night. I could reach down in the quiet places of my spirit, take out my bruises, my joys, unfold them, and talk about them. I could talk aloud to that oak tree and know that I was understood. It too was a part of my reality, like the woods, the night, the pounding surf. These my earliest companions giving me space. He had a very deep and even mystical connection to nature that continued to grow throughout his life. So from that early formation, that early space of his life, he went on to go through in Daytona the 7th grade, which is all that was available to Black children at that time. He had to go away to school to a Baptist academy in Jacksonville to be able to complete his high school education, which he did, became a valedictorian of his class, received a full scholarship to Morehouse College, Black college university now. And he then went on to Rochester Divinity School, Rochester, New York, and became a Baptist minister, first serving in Ohio after he graduated. A couple of other monumental things happened in his development. One was that he was married, and his first wife died after 4 years. was a very profound loss for Howard. And in 1926, when he entered the ministry, he was there only 2 years in Oberlin, Ohio, doing that before he was invited to become faculty at Morehouse and Spelman colleges in 1928. And then something happened in 1929 that was a life-changing direction. He was given an opportunity to study with Rufus Jones, a Quaker leader and professor at Haverford College in Pennsylvania. Now, that particular experience of being with Rufus Jones gave him the mystical depth that his Protestant upbringing had not so much provided him. And he wrote of Rufus Jones' position on mysticism. The word mysticism is used to express the type of religion which puts the emphasis on the immediate awareness of a relationship with God, on direct, intimate consciousness of divine presence. For our purposes, then, mysticism is defined as the response of the individual to a personal encounter with God, the God within his or her own spirit, to keep the relationship between the social concern and the experience of the inner light from being separate or separated from each other remains as part of the constant struggle within the society of friends itself. It is for this reason that great emphasis is placed upon silence, on becoming still within. This insistence is not so much that something invade the life of a man or woman from without, but rather that through quietness and inner solitariness, the individual becomes conscious of what is there all the time. Be still and know that I am God is the way the psalmist put it. These words, these teachings of Rufus Jones, the Quaker leader, international leader who led so many humanitarian efforts around the world, deeply affected Howard and helped form his direction in his life. From that, he went on to continue his deeper studies in the mystical traditions. Went on a trip to India, which I'll get into in a few moments. But I want to share with you a writing from 1961 where he took the teachings of Rufus Jones and had advanced them significantly in his work in a very practical, mystical way. For me, the choice is personal because all my life I have been seeking to validate beyond all ambivalences and frustrations the integrity of the inner life. The cruel vicissitudes of the social situation in which I have been forced to live in American society have made it vital for me to seek resources or a resource to which I could have access as I sought the means for sustaining my personal life beyond the ravages inflicted upon me by the brutalities of the social order. To live under the siege with equilibrium and tranquility of peace, to prevent the springs of my being from being polluted by the bitter fruit of the climate of violence, to hold and rehold the moral initiative of my own action, and to seek experience of community. All of this, to whatever extent has been possible to achieve it, is to walk through a door that no man can shut. These are very much the words of a man who has seriously integrated both the inner life and the outer life of spirituality on a very deep level. I would like to read for you one of the most, I think, powerful passages of his work, and it's called How Good It Is to Center Down. How good it is to center down, to sit quietly and see one's life pass by. The streets of our minds seethe with endless traffic. Our spirits resound with clashing with noisy silences, while something deep within us hungers and thirsts for the still moment and the resting lull. With full intensity, we seek, ere thicket passes, a fresh sense of order in our living, a new direction, a strong, sure purpose that will structure our confusion and bring meaning in our chaos. We look at ourselves in this waiting moment, the kinds of people we are. And the passage goes on and on. I'll skip to the end of it. As we listen, floating up through all the jangling echoes of our turbulence, there is a sound of another kind, a deeper note, which only the stillness of the heart can make clear. It moves directly to the core of our being. Our questions are answered, our spirits refreshed, and we move back into the traffic of our daily round with the peace of the eternal in our step. How good it is to center down. Words of Howard Thurman. The other real significant event that happened in his early ministry years was in 1936. He was as a part of a group that went to India on a goodwill traveling ministry. And he had the opportunity in that trip to meet with Mahatma Gandhi. And Gandhi asked him one of the questions, and they had very good discussion, but one question that Gandhi asked him was deeply, deeply affecting of Howard Thurman. And that was this: how can a Black man in the United States who is treated along with the rest of your people so poorly by Christians continue to profess Christianity? That was a very deep, deep ask. And he could not give Gandhi an immediate answer, but he worked on that for several years afterwards to get to the answer to that question. He started lecturing 3 years later with a title that was, the talk was Jesus and the Disinherited. And he went on to write and publish a book in 1949, which was, in fact, that message, Jesus and the Disinherited. So Howard Thurman, through that book, and I highly recommend that work as one of the most important things. If you want to study Howard Thurman's work, get to know him better and how his work relates to the world in which we're living today. Jesus and the Disinherited is a tremendous work. In that book, he offers a stark, realistic analysis of what oppression does to a human spirit. He named fear as the constant companion of those who in our society and in the world are disinherited. He exposed how deception becomes a survival strategy for the disinherited folks. He described how hatred, if left unchecked, corrodes the soul of both the oppressed and the oppressor. This is realism. Thurman did not pretend that love is easy or that nonviolence is in any way sentimental. He understood how power operates, how systems crush people, and how suffering shapes behavior. He refused to offer shallow comfort or easy answers. Yet this realism that Howard Thurman had did not lead him into despair, which would be very easy to do. Instead, it sharpened his insight. He asked, what kind of religion is credible to those whose backs are against the wall? What kind of faith speaks truth to people who live daily with humiliation and threat? In a time that tempts us towards withdrawal or rage in the modern world we're living in, Thurman's words offer another way to stand firmly in reality while remaining deeply anchored in the sacred. His answer to the fear, the deception, and the hatred that is so much a part of the life of folks in our world today, as well as long ago, the disinherited folks, as he called them, is love, is compassion. And he didn't say that you had to love people and love what they were doing. He made a very clear distinction between you can love people and not love what they're doing. Powerful, powerful teachings that have complete relevance to the streets of our cities in a world in which we're living in, where fascism is on the rise in so many places, and where there's such warfare, where there's such damaging hatred that has gone on even generationally that continues to inform human behavior. And the words of this prophetic Black teacher, minister, healer are still so relevant today. You know, when I learned of Dr. Thurman, it was as if, why didn't we know of this man in the 60s, 70s, in the white world that I lived in, the world that I lived in? Yes, our church was in a transition neighborhood. We had Black folks we went to church with as well, and friends from school. I would tell you that the thing that is so important to realize with Dr. Thurman's work is he, during the 1930s to the 1970s, was a very public figure. He was called by Life magazine one of the 12 best preachers of the 20th century. But he was later in life, when the civil rights movement was going full tilt in the 60s and 70s. He was a mentor to Dr. Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King carried his book, Jesus and the Disinherited, with him wherever he went on his travels as part of his work with Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Howard Thurman, such an incredible force in our world. His message is so relevant to today. His message of replacing hatred and fear with love. His message of replacing violence with peace. His message of replacing despair with hope. That was a profound combination of appreciating the depth of his own spirit and the depth of all of our spirit, and the necessity to move in nonviolent ways to affect change in our world, to bring about a better, more just society, was exactly what his calling was about, his ministry was about, and his legacy is about. I want to thank you for your time this morning, and I appreciate the invitation to be back with you once again, to share some of the walk and the inspiration of the Reverend Dr. Howard Thurman. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
And that is a picture of Reverend Howard Thurman. So let's take a moment, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and just think about the message that we just heard for a few moments.